road extension. We saved up our 1/3 cent sales tax, big regional road in Prescott Valley. We're going to cut a ribbon on it with our council at 4 o'clock today. So pretty exciting stuff. So come on out to Prescott Valley and look at our new north-south corridor as an alternative to Glasser Hill Road and also Robert Road. So what I got.
Awesome. I'll probably be using that, Norm, so good news.
Norm, if I may, I know you invited Mary Mallory to that, but I did talk to Craig Brown just a little bit ago, and if you want to send him a little email about it, inviting, I don't think it would have hurt his feelings. So he was asking about it, and I said he might check in with Mary, but it might do you a favor to shoot him an email directly, if I may say so.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Yeah, I know that's usually sent out of the town manager's office. We usually let that happen with the elected officials. We typically don't do it as staff, but I'll have town manager's office send him an invite. Thanks for that heads up.
You bet.
All right. Ian, what's going on over in Prescott?
So about the only thing that's regional based is the Corsair extension there off of Larry Caldwell is now complete and open with the new roundabout at Wilkinson. So it just kind of provides a loop now in the airport area, and if and when Airport Loop Road and some of those things over by Great Western ever go, that it's all designed to tie into all that. So that's about all I have.
Okay. Next on my list, I think Dan, you're up for the county.
Very good. I don't have a tremendous amount to report. We've got a chip seal project that's about a $1.2 million one that's kind of scattered all over the county. It's kind of a combination of HERF and half-cent roads for us. So that's kind of our spring project, so if you will. We're gearing up a few things for some summer construction. Our Williamson Valley Road safety project there at Kelly O'Neill Stringfield is on track for getting built this summer. We're waiting on some relocations from a few utility companies on that, hopefully to have that out of the way before the May-June timeframe for start date. Not a whole lot else, I guess. We're got through our budget season here. It's been submitted to our county administrator's office, and he's going through review of that. Then we've got budget hearings come April with our board. So it's nice to have that off my plate right now and in the hands of others for them to review. So that's about all. Thanks.
Okay, I think next, Myrna, would you have any announcements that the group might be interested in?
Hi, I do not have any announcement at this time, but I would like to say I look forward to working with everyone. So thank you.
Okay. Guess next, John Latier, have you got any announcements from the district?
I have a couple we can address. The State Route 69 widening, it has restarted. We had a restart kickoff meeting last week. That's the project that goes from Prescott Lakes to Frontier Village, widening to 6 lanes, and that project is at stage 3 design, so it has restarted at that same stage, and that will be continuing in design. On State Route 89 at Road 1 North, that signal project was awarded by the Transportation Board last month, and I have not heard of a start date on that, but we could look forward to that project getting started as we head into summer. I know there's some utility coordination happening right now at the intersection, so in anticipation of that construction, so that project will be getting started. And maybe just a bit outside of our area, or maybe on the edge, State Route 89, ADOT will be looking to do a microseal project from Paulden north up to the Hell Canyon Bridge. That'll be taking place this summer.
Yeah, can't wait for the signal. Alvin gave me a little update yesterday, so hopefully they'll get the utilities squared away sooner than later. It's always seems to be the interesting part with ADOT jobs is utilities. So
yes.
All right, we'll go down the list. Mark, I think I saw you jump in, but let me go to Vinny first with Simpo, and then we might see if you've got anything. Vinny, you got any announcements for Simpo that might?
Yeah, the only announcement I have is that my business cards came in, so I believe I have the job. So I think the only announcement is there's a new administrator, and as I just really want to express everyone's support, gratitude for everyone's support. Really appreciate the work that Chris Bridges did over the years, and definitely some shoes to fill. And I'm glad that him and I have remained close and communicated so much. So I feel like I'm hitting the ground running, and just glad to be back. So that's really my only announcement, and looking forward to working with you all.
Okay, and hopefully it's not an issue, but Mark, I think if you're there, have you got anything, we're an agency and announcement updates, any announcements from ADOT local agencies?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you fine.
Okay, then I won't try to dial in. I'm double booked here. I'm not sure how long I can be in the meeting, but I want the folks at Simpo to not think I ever forget about them. I don't. And LPA is here to help you out. Just that I'll make a comment about the off-system bridge call for projects for FY22 that was due in late February. We did only receive 3 applications, and the bridge committee has not made any selection yet. I'm just getting through those 3 applications. But if there is one that you want to put in or something, by all means, get it on the giddy up. And we'd like to be able to make sure we utilize the funding. But ADOT-LPA is here for you folks when you come across federal aid projects and opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else I'm missing? Okay. With that, I'll go ahead and move forward to consideration and possible action to recommend approval of the SR 169 intersection alternative selection report. Vinny or Daniel, you don't want to give a summary of that, or?
So we did receive the final report of the 169 ASR from Kittleson, which has been distributed to the TAC. Instead of having a massive TAC agenda, we did post these on our website pending approval, just so we didn't have an extra 200 pages of the documents in this agenda. But with the final report and everything submitted, we are looking for approval to move on to the board, and then go ahead and accept the plan after that.
Take myself off mute. I guess anybody else have any comments or discussion? We'll open it up. Okay, if not, maybe a motion. Okay.
Well, I'll venture into this. I've read through that alternative selection report. I have no real additional comments on things. I think that it's important that ADOT's comfortable with it, obviously. So John, if you have any comments on it, I wouldn't mind hearing it, but I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the State Route 69, State Route 169 intersection ASR, and look for a second and or discussion on it.
All right, we have a motion. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it. Ian Prescott.
Okay. Anybody want to have any further discussion?
Well, I didn't realize I was on mute there for a moment, but I was replying to Dan that the report has already, I think, started to accomplish what it was intended to accomplish. We're working with developers in that area, and we're already using that report and the layout of the concept to address some of the needs with the adjacent development that's happening in the area. So it's already starting to serve its purpose. And I think it'll work well.
That's good to hear, John. I'm glad that it's already working in our favor. And obviously, you'd mentioned on Tuesday that you guys were seeking funding for design and construction on it, and hopefully it's something along those lines as well.
Yeah, it gave us a good idea of the estimate, and like I said, it's identified some issues that we need to carry over to the adjacent developments, and as we're working with adjacent developments, those projects are identifying what we still need to work with on the roundabout design as well. So it's, I think it was money well spent. It's already serving its purpose.
Okay. Any other comment or discussion before we vote? All right. Allison, would you mind calling a vote?
Chairman Marbury?
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis?
Yes.
Member Mattingly?
Yes.
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Member Latier?
Yes.
And Member Bondoc?
Aye.
6 in favor, the motion passes.
Okay, I'll forward that to the executive board. Moving right along, consideration and possible action to recommend approval of the SR 89A Robert Road Traffic Interchange Alternative Selection Report. Again, we'd look for quick summary and background of that, maybe from Vinny or Daniel to kick it off.
Sure. So the 89A Robert Road ASR was completed by Kimley Horn, and they were looking at a phased approach to the project instead of doing it all at once due to price. We have received this, sent it out to TAC, and are looking for approval or acceptance to take to the board next.
Okay, any questions or discussion before you have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment.
Sure, go ahead, Norm.
Hey, Dan, did Yavapai County, I didn't notice them have any comments, as this is a regional type effort. Did county have a look at it or offer any comments?
We did provide some comments on to the engineer that was working on it in the first round of reviews, and I think those were accounted for in design. One of the things that I had asked about, I think, was trying to preserve the all the mailbox improvements we did there at Coyote Springs. With that realignment of things with regards to the, I guess it's Antelope Meadows where it comes out there. I really wanted to, make sure we weren't throwing that work away.
Okay, yeah, it was just important to me. I didn't see any comments about the Antelope Meadows Drive. There were some comments about that realignment of that, particular right-of-way. So I just want to make sure there's a whole boatload of, county unincorporated residents out that, could significantly be affected by their access. So I just want to make sure you got the comment. So if you're good, I'm good with it too. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I think, certainly to figure this thing out requires a little bit of realignment of things, and I'm not sure that what exists out there now is an ideal situation from any stretch of the imagination. So we expect, people that come down Coyote Springs, they're going to have a choice if this is the route we go, whether they go east or west to access onto the state highway. So, I'm not saying it's ideal for all those people. They may gripe a little about having a little longer route to go in some respects, but I think from a safety standpoint, it makes sense.
Good. Well, I'm glad. Yeah, we're looking forward to the partnership regionally to move this thing forward if that's our desire.
It's a very expensive project, Norm, and I'm not sure it's going to be easily done without a big influx of some federal dollars, is my guess.
Okay, any other comments or discussion? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion to accept the SR 89A Robert Road Traffic Interchange Final Alternative Selection Report and be forwarded to the Executive Board for approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, John, second. All right, can we have a roll call vote?
Chairman Marbury,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Member Mattingly,
Yes.
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Latier,
Yes.
Member Bondoc.
Yes.
In favor, the motion passes.
Okay, I think we're on item 6. Consideration and possible action to recommend amendment to the FY 2021 Unified Planning Work Program and the FY 20 to 24 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, UPWP and NTIP. I think we'll go ahead and turn it over for, again, a brief summary, and then we'll kick off discussion.
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the TAC. So the main part of this is the amendments to the work program and the TIP, but what we included in your packet was a little additional information on the HSIP timeline and process. The reason for that is that it was one of the primary amendments. So just a note on that HSIP crash data analysis and HSIP application. We are looking at a timeline basically starting now. Daniel, if you can pull up that timeline on the screen. We're looking at a timeline basically from now moving forward to November 1st when the applications are due. I appreciate working with you at the recent working meeting or workshop and trying to kind of work this out. But what we're looking to do at this point is we have identified about $20,000 for this project to be able to bring on a consultant, to procure a consultant to work with staff and the TAC to do two things: to do 5-year crash data analysis, and then also to help in preparing HSIP applications. HSIP is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and they will be announcing a call for projects come July. But the reason we're talking about this now is we would need to procure a consultant to assist us the next couple months. And as you can see on the outline, they would be participating in the next several TAC meetings, again, to analyze the crash data and then to begin working with you all and staff on possible safety projects. With that said, we will, with your recommendation on these amendments today, we will hopefully be able to take the amendments on to the executive board, and we would be able to move forward specifically with this HSIP and go ahead and send out a request for quotes on March the 18th. We would be putting that out for about 2 weeks. It'll be on our website for any consultants that are interested to submit a quote, and we'll go ahead and put that information out. And then at the next TAC meeting, we can go ahead and review the quotes at that point. That's one of the main parts of this, but I'd like to get into the other amendments, which is again really the heart of this particular agenda item. So skipping ahead, at least in your packet, a few pages. As we look at the work program itself, again, this is the current work program, fiscal years 20 and 21. We attempted to highlight, hopefully, anything in yellow that we are amending. So I'm definitely not going to go through everything page by page, but I am going to try and go to those things that are that we are amending specifically. So number one was adding, replacing Chris's name with mine. So we amended the work program where those locations identified the previous administrator's name, updated it with mine. And we also on page number 10, with the executive board and the technical committee, there have been a lot of changes on that. So we have updated, especially for the executive board, we needed to amend the chair and the vice chair. We have added the new membership of Phil Good will be the Councilman Phil Good will be the representative for City of Prescott. We've recently heard that Council Member Tom Armstrong will be the representative for Chino Valley. And then John Hughes is the representative from Dewey Humboldt. The other notable change too would be for the executive board is just to clarify, it'll be Gary Knight, and then Alvin Stump will be the alternative if Gary Knight is not available. Gary Knight is the transportation state representative for our region. So that'll be identified on here, even though it says Alvin Stump will update that. And then again, for the TAC as it stands is John Hughes, representative of Dewey Humboldt, and then Myrna Bonduck, who's with us today, will be indicated on there. Moving forward on to what's highlighted in yellow next on page 12. This was a accounting adjustment, so we just had to, there was clarification from ADOT, so we had to lower that previous dollar amount for PL funding for FY21, so we had to lower it by $639. Not a major adjustment, but it is still an adjustment from what was before. Moving forward, I'm now on page 16. It's basically that same number that we just covered, and sorry it's sideways, but it's basically that same number that I just referenced. So Allison went ahead and went into other sections where it was updated. Moving forward, the next part is page, I believe the next thing is going to be the HSIP. Yes, so page 24 is, again, we're looking to do the work with the HSIP program now. So a couple changes and lots of highlights here. Please note, Allison and I made a typo here, even though we put fiscal year 22 and 23. Again, that's not what this work program is. The one that we're working out of is the fiscal year 20 and 21. So what you're going to end up having as an amendment in this is not what you see, and my apologies for that, but is only going to be fiscal year 21. So what you're going to see, Allison and I are juggling the new work program and amending the old one. So again, my apologies, but the only table that will appear here is one of these budget tables. And that budget table will say fiscal year 2021, but it'll be that same dollar amount. So again, it's going to be that $20,000 amount. And
Vinny, can I jump in real quick? How much are we trying to capture? How much is available statewide for HSIP funding or to CYMPO? I understand it's competitive, so
yeah, it is competitive.
It doesn't come automatic.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Member Davis, I appreciate the question. So if I remember on the last call for projects, Norm, it was $70 million is what was available last time. If there's anyone from ADOT that has a better answer, that's the number that's come into my memory on the last call for projects.
You are correct, Vinny. It is
right.
70,000.
Yeah,
35,000 per year.
70 million.
Yep, 35 million per year.
Got it. Great. So I would expect it would be in line around there again. It may adjust. So
I guess I could for the TAC, if you don't mind. It's pertinent to this that the current Robert Road 898 interchange is a $12 million. It's our hot spot for safety. And in the past, it hasn't been eligible because it was more than $5 million. Is there any change in that particular criteria? Because it is our top safety hotspot, as I understand from our 2045 transportation plan, which is, I would understand our consultant will find out too when they do the crash data analysis. Is there a cap on the amount of funding?
Mark is on the call. I'm sorry. And I thought there is, but it's not coming to me right offhand. Mark, if you know.
Seeing that as well. We had a nice discussion this morning, which was a precursor to the HSIP workshops that will be upcoming prior to the call. It's scheduled for July. Carrie and Mona will provide those. They had some minimums, no maximum per project was provided this morning. So.
Okay. I think the only thing that maybe I would put out there, and I'm not remembering a maximum either. I think what it's going to come down is to the formula, the benefit cost ratio. So cost of the project and the benefit we're getting from it. I think that's where it's going to, I would assume, would dramatically make it a winner or loser in this particular case. All right, if we can move on. So I'm on page 33, I believe is the next yellow highlights. And in the middle of page 33, Daniel's going to get there in a second. In the middle of page 33, we didn't highlight it. My apologies. We're kind of going with regular highlights and then new highlights. But in the middle of it where it says plans, we should have highlighted where it says crash data analysis. HSIP applications, $20,000. So kind of right where Daniel has the cursor there. So $20,000. So that is part of the amendment. Let me pause there. That's the work program amendments, and then I'll shift into the tip. But I have covered quite a bit of territory. Any questions or comments so far?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple. Sorry, Frank, I'm just going to go. You're muted.
Yeah, go ahead. I had two mute buttons.
That's right. So in regards to HSIP, so in the past when the county has so for example, our Cornville Road project, okay? NACOG provided some a path for the application for that Burgess and Nyepel had done. We got it. I think the county is listed as kind of the, obviously is the owner of the facility. So while NACOG had, kind of offered to go through the paying for the application and the consulting fees and whatnot with it, the county still had an expectation to come up with any match money that was necessary. And then, of course, we are involved in the process going forward, even though ADOT is doing the kind of the project administration and whatnot. We had to come up with money for it. So I'm throwing that out there because I believe that there would be some expectations that member agencies, should they have a project selected within their community, that they would still need to come up with some dollars to cover any potential match money on this. Is that a fair statement, Vinny?
Yes, and Mr. Chair and Member Cherry, I appreciate that. That's a good point to this discussion. Absolutely, that exactly how Dan outlined it is what we would be expecting SIMPO to do at this point. So by procuring the consultant, we would take it all the way up through that application being discussed with this TAC, with SIMPO staff. We're going to want your input from day one with the consultant. Are you liking the project, not liking it, for all sorts of reasons, including what you just brought up, Dan, if there is a match requirement. In my experience in working with the consultants, they work incredibly hard to make that match as minimal as possible. But yes, I've had a mixture of 100% covered projects and then some, around 5%, if you will, match. But with that said, the expectation would be, from SIMPO's standpoint, 5-year crash data analysis, HSIP application, and then to your point, Dan, we would hand that application over to you if it was in Yavapai County's jurisdiction, to go ahead and sign that application, submit it, and be responsible for that particular project exactly as you outlined it. So that would be a really good description.
And that, from the county standpoint, that sounds great. I just want to make sure that our other member agencies understand that that it would be some expectation on them. Should they have some project that is going to rank high on the cost to benefit ratio, usually these decisions are made almost exclusively on that, and they just kind of find where the cutoff is for dollars available and they award those. And sometimes they are 100%, sometimes they're 5% match, and either way, it's a heck of a deal for any of our member agencies. And I would wholeheartedly encourage anyone to, if there's a eligible project in their jurisdiction, to give it a very serious look, because it is it's a real advantage for the SIMPO region. That's all.
Thanks, Dan. And just to add to that too, again, that's part of why I'm trying to push this as soon as we are doing this, in order to give you all a time with a consultant over the next 3 months to have that exact discussion. That should a project be, as Dan described it, really a great opportunity, again, maybe that match for whatever reason may be a financial hardship, then, we can move down the list onto the next ranked project. So I think a little extra time, to Dan's point, to have that awareness that there is a fiscal responsibility. And if it's just not able to happen now, then we can work on some other projects. But I appreciate that. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, Vinny, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a comment that might be helpful. Again, this morning we had a Everyday Counts presentation on HSIP. We had over 100 guests throughout the state, and one of the slides I just turned back to, Vinny, kind of answers a question that was asked earlier. Before 2019, it was $500,000 per year per COG MPO. Again, projects with the highest BC, but the presentation had a maximum, they mentioned a maximum project cost of $5 million and a minimum project cost of $250,000. And again, it was 35 million per year available. With that said, we had 3 speakers this morning, and we were really trying to peel the onion on these cost estimates, because the recent experience since it became a competitive process, selecting and targeting the spots in the state that the highest crash or areas in the state to reduce crashes. Costs are coming in anywhere from 20 to 50% over what is programmed. So this, to address it during development, it's almost already too late. And so that's where we've been trying to address it in the programming. And to do that, we have to identify as many unknowns, and that's difficult. That can be challenging. We have the same challenges on the ADOT state projects that get submitted for HSIP. And so Greenlight Engineering was a real help this morning. We did record that presentation. Again, it's not a silver bullet answer to everything, but it will give you some information to consider as you consider submitting an application. And any identification or itemization, I know in Flagstaff, when they wanted to do a roundabout project, the 4th Street roundabout, they took an old estimate and used that as a starting point. And without getting too long, I just want to say the percentage of the split of 100% versus the match is based on the countermeasure, which is in the highway safety manual. And wherever we can get 100%, that's great. But if we are considering shoulder rumble strips and these sorts of things, please do, as the sponsor agency, consider these other items that may get overlooked, meaning the other items of what's the pavement condition, the life cycle. This is a project that's 5 to 6 years down the road, that the call this July will be for 25 and 26. So with that, I just trying to give you some information that might be helpful, and we will send the links out for these presentations today in a few days, and Simpo will receive those as well.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Yes, thanks, Mark. I have a question for you, Vinny. Did I hear right that part of your proposed scope for the HSIP is to have the consultant also prepare the applications?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct. So again, the scope is relatively simple. It's 2 things. It's number 1, do 5-year crash data analysis, and number 2, to actually prepare the HSIP applications. Part of the $20,000 would include up to 3 HSIP applications. In my experience in working with consultants in the past, that's really the best use, if you will, of working with them in their knowledge of ADOT, what ADOT's looking for in this process, and to really help us create a winning application. And I've seen a lot of success in that. So Mr. Chair, yeah, it would be up to 3 applications. We would have the opportunity, if the region was aggressive and saw more, we could expand that. There is a cost associated with that, and we can cross that bridge when it comes. But at least right now, it's 3 applications.
And I guess that gets to my next point. How do you pick the 3? Is it just going to be the top 3 ranks, or is the TAC going to decide as a group, or what's your thoughts on that?
I appreciate the question, Mr. Chair. I would look for a consensus from the TAC and staff. So at the next TAC meeting, once we have the consultant to work with, to be able to bring forward that data, again, that 5-year crash data, the consultant's going to have a pretty decent list to start off with, but I would absolutely look to this group to have a discussion and provide some real input, and really be able to come up with a list from that would be my hope.
Yeah, and kind of my point is to follow up on Norm, that I didn't want to get into the situation of, say, we've got a big high dollar project that's number 4. We might is a consensus of the group, for example, want to push that up because of the possible dollar amount, or vice versa. So, and I would also think, before maybe some others chime in here, that you would still have the option of maybe the local agency working directly with the consultant to submit any other applications. They just may not have SIMPO funding behind that application preparation. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. So that's going to be an option that's fully available to you, period. And I like that idea. I like the question, and I'd turn it into an action idea that, again, part of this discussion through SIMPO will be maybe exactly what you're saying. Maybe if there's 5 projects, if you will, can the discussion be, all right, well, SIMPO is going to work on these 3 applications, but as to your point, the local agency will work directly with ADOT and possibly that consultant on a project for that particular jurisdiction. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Anybody else comments or questions? And I'm wondering if we're still moving forward, Vinny, with it's a big topic, so.
Yeah, we are still moving forward. Any other questions on what I've covered in the amendment for the work program, though? All right, good. Then I'll go ahead and move on to the tip. Again, we've attempted to highlight in yellow what we're updating, or in red in this particular case. So what Daniel's bringing up on the screen is, I guess, a couple things that's making this particular HSIP project possible. What is highlighted in red is, for now, we are needing to place on hold the 89A eastbound dual on-ramps alternative selection report. We had around $75,000. I know that remains talking with the TAC at the work meeting and hearing from you all. I definitely hear that this remains an absolute priority. From a staff standpoint, I am still looking at all possible options to make this particular project happen sooner than later. I don't have a proposal on that today, just know that I'm working on it. One of the main reasons, though, for placing this particular project on hold today through this amendment is because of the next item on here, and it's the payback to ADOT for obligation authority adjustment. So in working with ADOT Finance, there is an adjustment that needs to be made requiring us to adjust our finances and pay ADOT back what's listed here at $60,000. So as I have spent some time with staff looking at what our options are, the best that I could do to reconcile this particular issue is, in needing $60,000, is to take it out of that ASR. By doing so, it left around $25,000 left, which is exactly what we're needing for this HSIP project. So on one hand, I know by pausing this project, it's making the payback possible, it's making the HSIP project possible. But again, I'm very aware of the real priority to this region for 89A eastbound dual on ramps ASR. So please know I am working on a few things, and as soon as I have more information, I will report back, see if we can't make that project happen sooner than later. Again, hopefully no later than fiscal year 22, which is just a few months away for us. With that said, that completes the amendments of the TIP and the work program, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment when I get in line.
Well, we'll put you up front, Norm. Go ahead.
We talked quite a bit the other day about the Great Western Corridor Plan, and I understand this next year, that's going to be our big study. I guess what I would request at this point is the TAC working group is, do we have a anticipated project timeline for that? And we talked about additional funding the other day, but I see here I'm looking at a couple $100,000, $230,000. I think we could go ahead and do that study with whatever scope we got coming our way. So I guess that's my comment. Can we have Vinny work on a project timeline when we can send that out? because we can actually get started July 1st.
Yeah, that'd be fine with me, Norm, just from Chino Valley's perspective to at least start the groundwork of when we think we'll get task orders or whatever out and a proposed schedule.
Vinny, could you have you work on that and send it out to the TAC, because our 2 reports we just approved today, we got those started about this time last year. I mean, they usually will take 8 months to a year. So if we don't get started early, we're kind of behind the 8 ball, so to speak, by getting it done in time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Member Davis, I appreciate Norm. He's talking like a good planner. So we're speaking the same language, Norm. I'm with you. I'm fine with that. All about definitely jumping on that. I would say that item for sure is the next agenda item. It's going to be covered in the tip, but yes, I'm more than happy to work with staff and begin to get you information and the TAC information. So to your point, so we hit the ground running come July 1st. So I'm fine with it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I guess my only thought on that, and I am fully on board with that, unless we wanted to shift gears slightly with regards to the dual on-ramps. And I think Gabio had talked a little bit about whether or not the 200,000 we had was enough for what was expected. I do think he came back and reviewed things a little on Tuesday and said it probably was. But it wouldn't hurt my feelings if we somehow wanted to fund the on-ramp ASR and then maybe dip into the following year for Great Western and making up a little shortfall or something like that in that regard. So I'm not asking that this happen. I'm just throwing it out there as another option for us if anybody has an opinion on that. I think we all recognize the need and the value of Great Western work, and that may be a little larger size project. So getting it started early, there's certainly value in that. But I don't want people to think that we're removing the dual on-ramps from consideration completely at this point. I do think there's value in that one as well, and certainly has been identified as an important project in our RTP. So just food for thought. Thank you.
I like your comment, Dan. This is Norm. Would this be appropriate today to talk about moving the money? I'm looking at the next project priority in 23 would be the SR 69 corridor plan from Walker Road to Fane Road. So would we want to go ahead and, fund, I like what you're saying. It's a priority to do the dual left turn lanes on 89, but run the Great Western corridor plan over those 2 fiscal years?
That was just a suggestion, but that's kind of what I was thinking as a possibility. And Norm, I know you're a big proponent for Great Western, and I don't say this to step on your toes. I just it was a thought that came to mind, and it allows us to get moving on both of those come July. I think I guess the real question is whether the Great Western work would, if we started it early next FY, would that last long enough to be able to span over into the following FY?
Well, Dan, I was going to comment. I liked your leadership the other day that you looked at our transportation plan and we looked at what the priorities were. That's what the public voted on. I've always advocated it shouldn't be, the project of the month type of thing. We need to follow our transportation plan. It was accepted by the public. We need to follow it. And it was, there was a lot of money spent and a lot of good work done. And that's, I liked your leadership to say, I agree that dual left turn lane is a higher priority by technical document. We're a technical group. We need to start talking about it and get it on a timeline. It's sad that the money got taken, but yeah, let's keep moving on it.
Yeah, and
on 89A.
Agreed. It's just a deferral of it is kind of how I see it at this point, and I think we can shift gears and make them both work still, rather than just taking one off the table. That's my only concern, and I think that's a value to most of our member agencies that dual left turn or dual on ramp. I mean, so I'm all for that if everyone else is, but it just may require a little juggling of money. And I don't know if there's any issues with having a project span a couple FYs. That's my only other thought. Thank you.
You know, if I could comment further, we had, what, $60,000 for the, what do we call it? The distracted driving? Why was a study on the chopping block rather than distracted driving videos? I don't understand that. Why was that decision made? Did we make that as a TAC?
I would say, Mr. Chair and Member Davis, so to Norm's point, the discussion's open. You know, if you're, I guess I'm more than happy as a staff to take that input, to continue to look at it. Bottom line is we need it. We need the money to come from somewhere for that deficit with ADOT. If you feel that you want to pause, if you want to make the recommendation to staff and the executive board that we pause the distracted driving, move forward with the study for 8989A, we can definitely take that into consideration, Norm. What you're receiving today is the staff's work, putting together what we thought was best. Doesn't always mean it's the best. It's what we're scratching our heads trying to do what's best for the region. We think that the distracted driving, as you're aware, has been incredibly impactful, not to take anything at all away from 8989A and the work that needs to be done. I still am working on some options to deliver all possible things, but again, I haven't made enough progress to present that today. So to Dan's point, it's definitely a recommendation by staff to put it on hold. But if the consensus of the TAC is you would rather us look at the distracted driving campaign, I would need a little more time to process that, considering that we're halfway through a contract with a 2-year contract, and that is already in motion. So we haven't started the ASR for 8989A, and I'm thinking out loud now with you. So I think it's much more difficult, Norm, to try and stop the distracted driving because the contract's in process versus 8989A hasn't started. So forgive me for thinking out loud for a minute, but that would be the work that we did.
The other thing is by freeing up that 75K by deferring the on-ramps, you also free up the money for the HSIP contract. So you cover your outstanding debt, if you will as allowing the HSIP option to move forward. If you cancel the distracted driving, you're coming up short for one, but yet still being able to cover the ADOT outstanding balance. Correct, Vinny?
Correct. Thanks. That's a good point, Dan. Yeah, that's another perspective. Yeah.
But I just want to continue to advocate without planning documents. We talked here a couple of years ago, without planning documents, a lot of the stimulus money, we're getting notices every day, and it's significant money, you know, the $10 to $12 million. We just got notice today, Prescott Valley may get $11 million. They haven't really decided what you can spend it on, but you're talking some real dollars, and we don't have any projects on the shelf, so to speak, that are shovel ready and ready to bid. So continues to be my concern is we're always afraid to move forward with design plans, to have a shelved set of plans because we think it's too much. We've got money coming out of the feds that needs to be spent, and infrastructure is proposed. So we don't need to be afraid of the $10 or $12 million. I continue to advocate we don't have anything ready. And we need to do planning documents and get a set of design plans sitting on the shelf. They are as good as the day you put them on the shelf till you're able to have the funding to build them. But I understand the funding challenges.
And and Norm, I'll probably reiterate maybe the ADOT stance that when you have federal funds involved, there's timing. They will not allow design of a project without the construction also being programmed. So we can get up to 15% on a lot of these projects, which I think is what we're looking at, which I would fully advocate for. But going beyond that is, unless we use local funding, I think we're stuck with some of those. Just until they change the process, I think the advocation would be for them to maybe change how they do things to where we could get more projects on the shelf. Yeah, and I would say, just as far as my opinion, as far as the distracted driving, I understand the dollars, but I also, if we've got contractual obligations there, I would say look towards those obligations. You know, once the money's already obligated, we have one thing, but I would also chime in that I'm in support of trying to shift the money to include the on-ramps into FY22 and maybe have the Great Western split fiscal years, gives you a little more time to do your work, and also would keep the priorities in line with what's previously been done. So I would be maybe one more advocating for that position.
And Mr. Chair, if
Sure.
I could, just to help out, we're still on item number 6, which is the amendment. And in two more items, we're going to be talking about the TIP 22-26. So I know you just kind of all got pretty excited about it, and I want to work with you all, but I just think it'll be easier once we get to that item. I can actually have Daniel pull up exactly what you all are talking about in the spreadsheet. And once we do that, then by all means, you can, I think you all are on the right track. I'm hearing from, I believe, Norm, Dan, and Frank of making a little, some tweaks, and we can do that if you're okay, kind of holding off until we get to that item.
Sure, make us stick to the agenda.
I'm not making you stick to the agenda. I just want to be able to pull up the thing that'll help you out the most.
Sure.
Damn you, Vinny, for keeping us on track.
I know, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought that's what we were talking about. It was an agenda item. We were talking about the draft amendment and TIP, so I'm sorry if I spoke out of place.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm confused, Norm, because we're still on item 6, which talks about the amendment and part of the TIP. So get us back on track, Vinny, with what we're actually talking about.
All right, I'll help you out. You're still on the amendment of the work program and the TIP. In just a few more agenda items, I will be presenting to you the draft work program for the next 2 years, and then the draft TIP, which will cover fiscal years 22 to 26. And that's exactly what Norm was referencing in the Great Western study and the commitment to that. So we will cover that in agenda item number 8. So
Well,
right now, Mr. Chair, you're looking for a motion, if you will, to approve the amendments that were discussed for the work program 20 and 21, and then the existing TIP of 20 to 24.
Okay, and pardon my ignorance, but so the other items, the difference is they go out to 26 instead of 24?
Correct. The one that you're in now is an amendment to our current documents. Our current work program is 20 and 21. Our current TIP is 20 to 24. And then items number 7 and number 8 are brand new work programs and brand new TIPs that I'll be presenting.
Okay, but if we're talking about putting the on-ramps in FY22, is that appropriate in this topic or the future ones? See what I'm saying?
It'll be appropriate. It would be more appropriate if I can in item number 8.
Okay. All right. So I guess with that,
May I ask a question?
Please.
Item 6 is recommend amendment, but we were just talking about, I'm not sure if we agreed with that amendment, correct?
I didn't hear any objections to the existing work program and TIP. what maybe the confusion that's happening for some of you is there is overlap. Currently, we're working out of a tip of fiscal years 20 to 24. In just a moment, we're going to introduce a new tip that's going to be 22 to 26. And there is an overlap in there. So that's where some of the confusion's coming from. The 22 to 26 will, if you will trump the 20 to 24 here in a few months.
Can you just go back to the page that has the red, where the dual on-ramps are in red? Can we see if Daniel or somebody can find that page? So the amendment we're voting on, if I'm right, is to remove the dual on-ramps and add in the yellow, the paybacks, and the HSIP?
That's half of it. The other half is the amendments to the work program that include my name, that includes new TAC members' names, that includes executive board members' names. There was a $639 adjustment. It included those changes also.
Right, so what you're saying is with this particular item, we don't need to worry about shifting the red to FY22, that we're going to do that in the next agenda item.
That is correct. You're going to do it in agenda item number 8.
Okay.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to the FY20 and 21 UPWP and the FY20 through 24 MTIP as discussed here and presented by our administrator.
Okay. And does that cover the typos, Vinny? Is that sufficient for that too?
Yeah, if Dan wants to just go ahead and make that verbal note to include anything that I referenced in the presentation, that would be fine.
Okay.
I think
that's what he did.
That is confirmed, and I include that as part of my motion.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's perfect. Just want to make sure we're covered. Thank you, Dan. So we have a motion. Anyone like to second? I'll go ahead and second. So put me down as a second for that one. And I'll call for a vote.
Chairman Marbury,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Member Mattingly,
Yes.
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Lutzier,
Yes.
Member Bonbach.
Yes.
6 in favor, the motion passes.
Okay, now we're moving to item 7, which is review and discussion of the recommended approval to post the FY 22-23 draft Unified Planning Work Program for public comment. So I guess keep in mind this is only 22-23, and Vinny, want to take it away from there?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TAC. So it is that time of year. It is a brand new Unified Planning Work Program. Again, this is a federally required document of the MPO. Simple explanation is it describes all things we're going to do, both in a narrative and in a budget. It is required of us to do it. A few years back, this is the second time we're actually able to do a 2-year work program. These used to be an annual thing, but in working with Federal Highways, Federal Transit, and ADOT, we were able to make the improvement to now have a 2-year work program, which basically saves staff time and energy of having to do this every single year. Daniel, if you'd go to the next page, please. So as we look at it, what we're looking to do is to provide this to your review today. Any comments you may have, we would like to take this on to the executive board and then issue it out to the public for their review and comment. It'll be located on our website to be able to look at it. Ultimately, what we're working towards are those dates highlighted in yellow. So we will bring it back to your May 6th meeting with the final draft. and then be looking for your recommendation onto the executive board at their May 19th meeting. It'll go out for public comment for 30 days between the next executive board meeting and then your TAC meeting that's listed. I would also note that the first part of April, Federal Highways will host a meeting where they will review the work program, and they're going to extend an invitation to staff and the technical committee and the executive board. This has traditionally happened in person. There's usually 20, 25 of us around the table, but we'll go ahead and do it via Zoom in light of the pandemic. So I'm going to quickly, I know it's a bigger document, so again, just want to hit some real highlights. Again, on page 2, we've identified that we are going to be including the this HSIP effort that we've talked about in length today. The next couple pages, again, I won't spend a lot in, but it's the basics of the MPO, of our vision, mission, introductions of who we are. You have an overview of staff roles and responsibilities. You have the various committee structures that are identified of the executive board and the TAC, again, of those particular members and their different roles. You have our operating procedures. I'm on page 12, Daniel, is where I'm going to next. The only thing of note at this point, again, this is where I know we throw out a lot of acronyms, especially for the public if you're not following or tracking, and our apologies for that, but this is a good resource or reference on these pages to help understand whenever we say STBG, PL, SPR, and we throw them out a lot, but this is a little more explanation to each of those. So again, the MPO works with various colors of money, if you will, or various funding sources. This particular page goes into detail. What's highlighted in yellow, and is something new to us this year. Again, with approval of ADOT, Federal Highways, and the Federal Transit Administration, I will give the end comment that it's all to our benefit, but it is a little bit of a different process, is they have recently approved and are allowing us to now to consolidate and work 2 types of funding that were previously separate, which is the PL, or the Metropolitan Planning Funds, and then the 5305D, D as in David, Federal Transit Association Administration, funds. We're now able to combine those 2 types of funds together. Again, note is one is Federal Highways, one is transit, but we can bring them together. The positive is the 5305D was a 20% match. What we're now able to do when we consolidate the 2 is we're now able to pay a lower match, which is basically more money for the region, if you will. So instead of a 20% match down to a 5.7, the apportioned amounts are still the same. So we're still getting what we received before. It's just we are getting a better match on it. Page 13, Daniel, is an overview of those particular funds that we will be receiving in 22 and 23. Again, 2-year work program. So you'll be able to see that consolidated planning grant that I was just referencing. When you combine the 2, we'll be receiving our federal funds of about $202,000. What we'll actually be programming is the obligation authority, which is $191,718. Next column over is SPR. You see that we receive 125. We'll program 118. Surface Transportation Block Grant, again, we receive 684. We'll program 649. You see the totals on the end of what we'll have in the program is $959,597 with a match of $61,120. I will also note that even though that 5305D as in David has been now consolidated with PL, that dollar amount has actually increased. We've worked with ADOT over many meetings to be able to increase that dollar amount. There's there's an expectation by ADOT and Federal Transit Administration for more transit planning. As staff, as a director, when I was in Havasu, and I know Chris participated in this also, we're just not receiving enough funds for what's being required of an MPO. So the simple version is we were able to increase that dollar amount, not to the level that it needs to be, but better than it was. So that's just a note at this point. Page 14, please. Carry forward amounts is an ongoing process for staff. Allison is continuing to look at and try and project what dollar amounts will carry forward. We don't have that available today. That will be filled in by the time of the executive board meeting next week. But she's continuing to review and estimate where we will be and what dollar amounts will need to be carried forward into the next year. Page 15 and 16 give an overview of where these funds are being divided. Again, all these particular colors of money that I've mentioned. This gives a good overview. I'm on page 17 now. Looking at the work elements, this is where we shift into the narrative. In the narrative, we're required to do two things. We're required to propose all activities, and we're also required to identify our accomplishments in these different tasks. I would say for proposed activities, where it becomes critical is in order for Allison to process reimbursements and identify what the MPO is doing, it must be listed in the work program. So it is comprehensive, it is thorough. There is a long list I will not go through at this point, but please note what it does need to say, and we'll make the adjustments, is where it says at the top of this page, FY22 proposed activities, it will need to say FY22 and 23. So a little bit of a typo. We'll include the 23 for the executive board. But what you do see here again is a list of all activities, meetings that we've been involved with from an administration standpoint. Moving on to page 20. In work element 20 is a regional transportation, regional planning projects, which has been referenced several times today. This is an inclusion into the work program for the new one, which is, I give full compliments to staff, the work that Daniel and Allison did. This is a very helpful illustration. And I know Norm mentioned many times, you know, the time, energy, and the process that went through. So with that in mind, we did go ahead and put it in the work program. This is a very valuable illustration of the projects that were prioritized, listed in addition to at least from the regional transportation plan, the planning construction cost estimate. So we did include that in this work program, and I do compliment staff for including that in there.
Mr. Chair, if I can stop you, Vinny, real quick.
You bet.
Go back to, page 18, please.
Okay.
Just something I noted on here, page 18, under our 2021 accomplishments, we do still have the eastbound on-ramp ASR on there. We're saying we began it. I think if things hold true to the direction we're going, we might want to take that off before this goes out to the public. That's just a thought. So
very good catch. Really appreciate that, Dan. We'll make that note for sure. Thank you.
Very good. Sorry to interrupt. I
Not at all.
get back to it before we get too far here. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Moving forward I am now on page 24. Again, this is a topic of the day, this HSIP effort. So that has been included in order for us to be able to move forward with it. We have identified it as a project moving forward. Page 25 is the public engagement and education. Again, the distracted driving safety video campaign, marketing campaign of working with Sparklight, formerly Cable One. We are in the midst of a contract with them. We are looking to, the pandemic pause things, and then the shift of staff from Chris to me has also paused that, but we're looking to continue with where we are in the timeline. Page 26, work element 400, coordinated mobility management. A couple highlights here, and this was also based off Norm's previous comments. You know, one of the things that is required of the MPO is a coordination plan to identify what work is being done to coordinate mobility, to coordinate services, most especially for elderly and disabled. So we did ensure, and that's in the first paragraph, we're referencing that. But then what's highlighted in yellow, we added that in 21, the Yavapai Passenger Transportation Study Recommendation Report was completed by NACOG. And then also we noted that the efforts of the CARES Act funds as it relates to transit and the work that Prescott Valley is doing. So we did add those notes from previous comments. Page 28, work element 500, environmental. Again, we remain to be a non-attainment area. We continue to monitor that and continue to do mitigations to keep us in that status, because when the MPO switches, it just increases a wealth of responsibilities and requirements. Page 30 is the capital expenditures. We don't have any capital expenditures listed at this time. Page 31, what's highlighted in yellow again is that carry forward, which I mentioned earlier, that Allison is going to continue to work on and determine where we are moving forward. So with that said, I ran through that very quickly. There are no, if you will, substantial changes. You know, it's work as usual, if you will, other than what I've highlighted. So with that said, I'd be happy to take any other questions or comments at this time.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, so maybe it might be time to look for a motion. I think pretty much it was as presented, Vinny, except for maybe the one item discussed would be the correction on the eastbound on-ramps in the work program. So the motion would probably be with modifications as discussed.
I think Vinny noted another typo or two, but I think they're on them. So I'll motion to recommend approval to post the FY 22 and 23 draft Unified Planning Work Program for public comment with the modifications we discussed here today.
Okay, have a motion. Anybody want a second? Okay, I'll go ahead and second that one. Let's have a motion and my second. We'll call for a vote. Allison, please.
Chairman Marbury,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Member Mattingly,
Yes.
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Latier,
Yes.
Member Bonda.
Yes.
6 in favor, the motion passes.
Okay. So I think if I've marked my agenda right, we're on item 8. Review and discussion and possible action to recommend approval to post the draft FY 22 through 26 MTIP for public comment. Vinny, I think that's you again.
Yep, that's me again. Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the TAC. So here's the one that I think everyone was eager to get to sooner than later. So here we go. So again, now we're looking, what we had again previous was the previous tip. So this is the new tip. It's going to cover fiscal years 22 to 26. Really, if you will, yes, there's going to be some additional modifications based on today's discussion. The primary goal, if you will, not only to look at those years, but again, we're adding fiscal years 25 and 26 as noted. and then we're adding a parking lot. So I'm going to spend a little extra attention talking about those, but we'll get to them as they come up in the pages. So Daniel, I am on the first page of the tip. So first thing here is the crash data analysis, highway safety improvement program and applications. Again, just a real clear note here for full transparency. It's still $20,000. Allison and I, in trying to make everything balance, have an additional $9,000. So it's, if you will, as a placeholder. I didn't do a shell game here on you all, is what I'm saying. So we have an additional 9,000 that we needed to put somewhere. So for right now, that's why it says 29,000. It's probably not the worst place to put it, just in case there are more applications than we have it, but we may find a better place for that $9,000. But in case you were wondering why it's not 20, that's why. Going on to the next page, which was the bigger part of the discussion today. So at the top, the projects to be determined based on, well, actually, I would go to, Daniel, actually, if you can go back to the last one, I'm sorry, it would be better to help out this next part. So what was referenced today was the project for the Great Western Corridor study, which is in fiscal year 22. So it's not highlighted in yellow, but it's right below that yellow highlights. This has been talked about today. The dollar amount that we have at this point is $196,000. What was referenced today was back to our working meeting 2 days ago. And the discussion was if that was enough to do what was intended for that particular update. I believe Dan Gabbio either said in the meeting or maybe followed up with me afterwards, felt that that dollar amount would be adequate at this point for what's needed. I appreciate his input. Now, keeping that in mind, if we move forward with that, and Daniel, or Daniel, if there's a, there you go, if you can stop right there, and that way we can see it all. So now to kind of look at the bigger picture here with what you all are talking about today. We have listed on here in yellow, towards the bottom of the page, is the projects to be determined. And again, this was based on the discussion the other day. By all means, offer any adjustments. We just tried to capture what we were hearing best. So we're looking at programming fiscal years 25 and 26. That's a real work in progress still, clearly. One of the big discussion items was a real commitment to be able to follow up that Great Western Corridor plan with whatever we can possibly do. There was a lengthy discussion in that meeting with Norm and Dan Gabbio, what was possible, what was not possible. For now, we've just, for the sake of this meeting, we've penciled in $483,000 in fiscal year 25. But again, this TAC made it very clear that we really need to see what happens in that Great Western Corridor study to make some better decisions. So for now, it's penciled in. Again, we can fully adjust this today, and this is the place to discuss it. The other part was, what was mentioned was the Sundog Connector alternative selection report with some discussions with staff. Try to ballpark a number for now. So we do have parked $118,000 in fiscal year 26 to do some work. And then again, and please, I know you're going to jump on me on this one, but the eastbound ramp, it's not intended to be in 26 by no means. We want to deliver that. I hear the emphasis today, but just for accounting purposes, we wanted to account for that money. And Allison plugged it in 26. I'm not advocating 26. I just needed a placeholder. So we know that you all want that project as soon as possible. But for right now, it's penciled in 26. And then we still have, again, that to be determined box. And I see 290,000 remaining for 26 that you all need to speak up and give staff some input. Again, if there's other plans, studies, projects that we would be looking at. Just as another note, that 12,000 that you see there was the additional transit dollars that I was mentioning earlier, that we went to, if you will, fight for, and we received. That's what the additional dollars are. So it's not a lot, but it's definitely indicated there. I'm going to go ahead and pause there, because that, other than the parking lot, and I'll get to that in just a minute, but you've all have already started the discussion, and I appreciate all the input. So I want to get as much clarity as we can at this point, because where I think I somewhat cut you off is, again, I believe Dan Cherry was saying, maybe to look at that fiscal year 22, to look at Great Western Corridor study update, that's $196,000. And would that possibly be a place to go ahead and take out of there for the eastbound dual on-ramps 89A report? That's, by all means, that's an option. Just know that, we can do that. You're just reducing monies available for Great Western. And again, with that said, you can look at those other projects not highlighted, like the SR 69 corridor plan, the 89A widening plan. If you'd like to give input today and move those out a year, again, you're just being able to move some monies forward. That's an option of this TAC. So with that said, I will turn it back over to the chair and listen for what direction and questions you might have for staff.
Okay, before we get going too much on the on-ramp and other project discussions, just point of clarification for me, Vinny, on the crash data analysis portion that's up just a little higher. You've got, just so I'm clear on this, we've got 29,000 each year. So is that a plan to update that with the recent crash data from year to year? Is that how that shows?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, that would be it exactly. We would do what we're about to do for this year. We would do every year. Every time that ADOT has a call for projects for HSIP, we would want to do a 5-year crash data analysis and HSIP applications. So far, ADOT has done that every year for the last 5-6 years. 5 years, I think it is, except for last year. They did skip last year. If that happens, we'll amend it. But, we would like to, staff would like to have those dollars available to 5-year to do the data analysis for crash data and HSIP applications.
May I offer a thought? Vinny, when you mentioned they skipped last year, I think they switched over to a biannual on the HSIP.
Okay.
So I can confirm that, but if you were looking at an annual budget there, maybe that's something that could be biannual.
Yeah, if you could confirm that, John, that would be great. And if that's the case, then we'll exactly do what you said, and that would free up, some additional monies for sure. We can do that.
Yeah, I think they're doing two. They moved over to doing 2 years worth of awards at a time.
Okay,
So I'll confirm that.
Thanks, John.
I think Mark kind of touched on that a little earlier as well in his comments. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah.
I know.
Just real quick, Norm, before we do that, just want to maybe mention, Mark had mentioned to me earlier today, he's been double booked, so if he couldn't stay on, that's why he had a bunch of meetings. So sorry to interrupt you, Norm, but go ahead, please.
We've talked in the past as a TAC about the CYMPO administration and operation, and I see there's a mixture. We keep changing acronyms for the funding. I see it CPG now, but we also mix the SPR and also the STBG. Vinny, can you comment about all these projects we got going on here? There's a mixture of both. I really thought in the past that we used the planning level dollars and SPR to fund CYMPO, and the STBG funds was for the studies and the like. Can you expand upon that, Vinny?
You bet. Thanks for the question, Norm. Yeah, and here's one where, to Norm's question, that each MPO is a little bit different. It's, and I guess I'd be a little bit curious on previous conversations that maybe you all had and Chris had and so forth. From each MPO to each MPO, it is different. And what I think staff tries to do, what I'm trying to do, what I will do moving forward, is what is that sweet spot? What's that balance of using the different fundings that we receive? And I think the real behind the scenes evaluation happens, Norm, is with the different matches. And what we try and do is just make the money work as best as we possibly can. We try and stretch every single nickel out that we can. So I'm always working with Allison to figure out, where is it best to use STBG, SPR, PL, 5305D, where she's always looking at, where we're running out of local match from. Again, we always try and use in-kind whenever possible. So it's a bit of a juggling act, Norm. I don't know if there's a perfect science. There's definitely no requirement. Each of these types of funds have certain restrictions with them, if you will. STBG is commonly known, if you will, as the most flexible type of funding that we can use for the most possible things. Would be a simple way. Traditionally SPRPL, again, very planning specific things. So, to me, I guess, Norm, my experience in doing this, it's just this constant lever pulling and pushing of trying to find the right balance to pay for admin, planning, projects, and anything else that we're looking to invest. So I'm inheriting what this is. From what I'm seeing, it's working really well, unless you're seeing something I'm not. But it's definitely kind of a juggling act is how I would phrase it.
So it goes to my question. Why don't we just use the new CPG and SPR to fund CYMPO? Why can't we do it that way?
I would say to some degree you can. I guess it would help me out, Norm, if I knew where you were ultimately heading to, because I feel like we're funding everything that's on the table, but maybe I think you're kind of getting a little bit in the weeds on me, and I'm not sure, I guess, what I'm missing that you're trying to get to, if I can ask it that way.
I'll back off then, Vinny. Forgive me.
Yeah, no worries, Norman. Again, my apologies if I'm missing it. I don't think we're lacking anything. We're using every dollar we're receiving. So I guess follow up with me, Norm, if I'm missing something. But at this point, I think we're making the money work for us the best possible way. But I'm always appreciative of other sets of eyes on it. So.
Okay. Any other comments and discussion? I guess I'll start it off to say, I guess, Vinny, going back to our discussion earlier, I would personally like to see if we can rearrange this a little bit to actually show the on-ramps in 22 and make adjustments accordingly, like either splitting years or shifting monies, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, Mr. Chair, and I guess I want to, because I think we could get complicated pretty quick. So I guess if I could ask a question of you and the TAC, is the consensus then that you're willing to support reducing the Great Western Corridor study that's currently at 196,000 and to go ahead and carve out 75,000 in fiscal year 22, which is a few months away, and go ahead and reduce that amount in order to do that on-ramps that you all are talking about? And if that's the case, then we can absolutely do that. And also, to Norm's earlier point, staff can start preparing a timeline so that when July 1st comes around, we hit the ground running on that. Is that, let me start with that question. Is that a consensus of the TAC at this point? Well,
I'll start with that, Vinny. My thought was actually to maybe I hate to use the word slow down, but to maybe adjust the Great Western to not necessarily take the money away, but maybe shift 75 or maybe that 78 into FY23 and see if we can work out a schedule to have the study split the years. I'm not sure if I'm getting too complicated for you, but I would almost rather look at, that would maybe give us more time to get a better handle on the cost for the SR 69 corridor plan and maybe look at the money there since that's a bigger pot. Again, throwing it out to the TAC, that's just my thoughts on it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. I don't think it feels a little bit like the 69 corridor plan is a little bit of a shot in the dark on cost. Is that a fair statement? Vinny may not even know on that.
Yeah,
But
you all might know a little more history. I don't know.
I guess my feeling is I'd make up what we take off from that, and then we'll be a little farther along. And if we need to make adjustments in regards to that 69 corridor, we can do so at a later date. I'm not really sure how we came up with the 471,000 for the 69 corridor plan, to be honest, and that that feels like it might be a little fat, but I really don't know what all is involved, and maybe it's something that ADOT has given feedback on in the past to Chris or Daniel, but to me, I'd rather make up the on-ramp costs there, and then buy us a little bit of time without having to shift everything else out. So my thought.
Okay. Anybody else have thoughts on this?
So if I wasn't clear, I was suggesting we span the two FYs on Great Western. Okay.
Yeah, I can make note too to see if there's any history here on that 69 corridor plan.
Yeah, and just to maybe back you up a little, Dan, that in my mind, that with the 69 being an FY23, that gives us a whole year to iron that out and double check all those numbers. This being a breathing document, Vinny, is this one that we do every year, an update?
The tip traditionally, yes, we have. We would do one every year, and we would advance. Into the next year. So next year, I will be presenting a 23 to 27 to you is what we would be doing.
Yeah, so we could, in my mind, we could have those numbers. As closer it gets, the better the numbers get.
Yeah.
So
another little thing is you can pull that 29,000 for the HSIP for next year as well and reduce what you're stealing from 69 corridor plan from that.
Yeah, and I appreciate Dan mentioning that. And also, if you would remember, there was a 29,000. Actually, I'm sorry, the 29 should be 20. So that 9,000 also would add to the 29. So we've just increased 38,000. So.
Yeah. Yep.
We're halfway to that 75,000 of not having to diminish anything else too much more.
Agreed.
Yep.
Chairman, can I ask a question? It's Ian, City of Prescott.
please, Ian, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand all this. So in 21, the amendment we already made, we're going to move the money out of the 89 study to make up the 55 shortfall, pay the 20 HSIP. Is that in 21? Is that in 22? That was the first thing we did. We did that.
Mr. Chair, Member Mattingly. So Ian, so yeah, that would be exactly what you did, and it was in fiscal year 21.
Okay. So then next year, what Dan and Frank, you're saying is that we would then reestablish the study next year, the 29 or whatever, we don't need it maybe next year. And then, so that would help with that. You just said that. And then that money would come from the Great Western study, which would be partially funded, and then maybe move money into 23 from the SR 69 corridor. Is that what I heard?
Yes, that would be the right summary. And
Okay.
I'm doing other quick math.
In case
here.
I support that.
Sorry, Ian, what?
I support that if that's the case.
Yeah, and
That's all.
another math note at the very bottom of the page is another 12,000. So with what Dan Cherry did earlier, 38, 40, 50. So we're now at $50,000. So at this point, we would just need to carve out 25,000 from somewhere, which is way better than we started this conversation. So it's getting better by the moment. So if we were needing to adjust anything, you know, right now it would be $25,000 possibly from Great Western Corridor study or some other area, but I'm not sure what that other area would be.
Okay. Yeah, that's sounding good to me. Anybody, I don't want to cut the conversation short, so feel free to chime in if you've got comments or questions.
So just to be clear, if I can, Mr. Chair, what staff's going to do is we are going to go ahead based on this comment is we are going to enter in, which it's already at the bottom of the page, but we're going to adjust it. It's the SR 89A eastbound dual on-ramps alternative selection report, $75,000. We're going to put that in fiscal year 22. At this point, again, needing $25,000, unless I hear an objection. For now, we'll just go ahead and take that out of the Great Western Corridor study. We'll reduce the 25 just for now. If we can find it somewhere else, we'll get that. But just to make everything balance, reduce the 196 by 25, and we'll still be able to move forward with the 89A eastbound dual on-ramps and the Great Western Corridor study update. Is that what I'm understanding?
Okay, so my question to that would be if we reduce the 196 by 25, when we get to it, if it winds up falling short financially, is there a way to make up for that? I don't want to fall short, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I hear you. I think there is, and again, I think maybe a little bit behind the scenes, MPOs and COGs have the ability to loan each other money. So, you know, based on some of the comments, I think by Dan earlier about the 69 corridor plan, we don't know the exact cost. So we could be in a position to relatively easily borrow that 25,000 from another MPO or COG and pay back in the following year. And that would allow us to not be in a situation to harm the Great Western Corridor study. So we do have some flexibility on that point.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Okay. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. Oh, go ahead, Norm.
My other comment, I know we're talking about the current, 22 and 23. In the past history, we seem to work very hard as a TAC in the current year or the next year. And we always look way out. And we talked here a couple years ago. Why are we looking at trying to program the 25 and 26? They always seem to be kicked out, never looked at, because we're looking at funding other projects. Costs don't come in right. You got to fund a current, look at our current plan. We're helping fund the Highway 69 project because we need another 100,000. I guess I just see it short-sighted to keep looking out at that 25, 26, 5-6 years from now with trying to plug in a project and we don't even know what the scope is. I mean, Highway 69 is a current example. We're just trying to make money fit the corridor plan, and we're a couple years out even looking at it. So I guess my recommendation is to go ahead and cut the Sundog connector, from looking way out at, a year, 25, 26. Just leave that. We don't have to park money in there. We have a plan that says what we're looking at. What's important to me is get the long-range transportation plan looked at and get that funded adequately, which is going to be in FY24. Why do we need to look at FY25 and 26 at this point?
If I can, Mr.
All we do is
Chair,
adjust it.
If I
All we
can,
do is adjust it every year.
I understand, Norm. I think Vinny will probably chime in, but I think it's to match the ADOT 5-year program. But go ahead, Vinny, if you've got some enlightenment on that.
I do, and the answer is partially because we're required to do it. We're required to have a transportation improvement program that covers this 5-year span. So it's a federal requirement. I think Norm brings up a lot of fair points of his experience, my experience, and there is a frustration that I would share with Norm. So then how do we, I guess for me as staff, how do I balance out kind of our ongoing frustrations and the requirements? But easy answer, this TIP is a federally constrained document and it is a requirement of the MPO. So we would need to have it, and that's probably the biggest reason for it.
I mean, I guess my comment would be too, I'd like to look at the short term. The Highway 69 corridor plan would be coming up a year from now. Can we do some work rather than always, I mean, we don't even have the scope of Great Western determined yet. We talked about that over the last year. I understand we lost our administrator, but I'd like to see us be ready more when the new budget year starts of having the scope kind of identified and the funding to match. So I might make that comment I asked earlier, let's get the Great Western corridor plan, get a project timeline. I understand we got funding over 2 years, but between now and next year, we don't wait till this time next year to say, what are we going to do about the Highway 69 corridor plan? Will our funding match any type of scope we have? It's something we can just get a lead on. I know, Vinny, you're here to stay. You've been here before, so that's just my recommendation.
I'm with you, Norm. Third time's the charm. I'm not planning on going anywhere. So we'll see if it takes this time, but I'm with you. Let's hit the ground running to Norm's point. We heard about Great Western. Norm's going a year out. I'm fine working with you all on 69 corridor sooner than later. So yeah, let's take advantage of the calendar. I'm on board with it.
Well, I don't know whose job it is, Vinny. I know you're busy, but we got the Great Western corridor plan we talked about a year ago, and we've made no progress on knowing what we're getting for 196. It's difficult anytime you try to match money. I mean, we can try to match the scope, but we don't even really know what we're looking at, nor have we explored it.
Yeah, and I'll maybe add, it always seems ironic that whatever our budget is what the proposals seem to find a way of coming in at. So, but yeah, I would agree, Norm. We're actually, for Chino's point of view, I think we're looking at doing the same thing. We've had many years in the past where we really haven't looked at much CIP work. So we're kind of in the same boat now of trying to not only make sure we're getting done what's now, but we're also trying to get ahead and plan for what's going to go next year, like you said, with those timelines and budgets. So I can definitely empathize and understand what you're saying there, because we're actually in about the exact same situation here locally in Chino Valley. So I guess I would maybe second that comment that what we can do looking ahead to next year is maybe recommend some of these things, have maybe a little, some schedules and scopes prepared for it. And I think, Vinny, that maybe you being here a whole year by that time might be possible to do. So
I appreciate that. Day 4 is a little bit different than 1 year from now. So I appreciate that, Frank. We'll do that. Maybe just one last comment to Norm's point to help out with that. I think what I've attempted to introduce to alleviate the pressure of 5 years from now is that hold to be determined category. I don't know if, to the best of my knowledge, SIMPO hasn't used that before. Maybe I'm wrong on that, and forgive me if I am. I have used it in Havasu, again, to take a little bit of the pressure off that we just don't know on this particular conversation 5 years from now So, you know, we are perfectly fine, as it's listed on the very bottom of this page right now, having that to be determined to give everything a little bit more time. At least you can see the monies are there. It does not have to be spelled out in a project, and we'll give staff and the TAC a little more time to get closer to that. And at least it's documented. So that was my intent of putting the to be determined row or category, if you will. I hope that helps. Are there any other questions or comments for staff? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and make the notes that we made today, and we can move forward. I can move on to the last part, which is the parking lot. And then are there any other questions or comments though on this part?
This is John. I have a just noting on the plan there, if we're using the 29,000 or 20,000 for the crash data analysis in fiscal year 21, if it is a biannual, that fiscal year 22 might be, that 29,000 might be available in one of the other projects as well.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And Dan mentioned that too. So I did some quick math. Forgive me.
Okay.
I think I came up with around 50,000 based on 3 categories that we're going to clean up. That 12,000
Okay.
at the bottom, removing the 29, and then there's an additional 9,000 that we don't need on one of the years. So I think I quickly got us up to 50,000. So we'll go ahead and clean that up in the tip. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, and then Mr. Chair, members of the TAC, if I could move on to the last part of this, and that's the parking lot, which if Daniel, if you can get to that page, I believe it's almost the last page or second to the last page. So as discussed in the working meeting 2 days ago, the effort that is underway currently with the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, which represents the MPOs and COGs in Greater Arizona, which is all the MPOs and COGs in Arizona outside Phoenix and Tucson, or MAG and PAG, working through RTAC, the staff of the MPOs and the COGs, in particular, the directors of each of those organizations, have been working with Kevin Adam. And what we're witnessing this year, maybe most of you are tracking and following what's happening down at the Capitol as we speak, is, economy is looking better than expected. There's some additional funds that appear to be available. So legislation is being proposed for a whole list of individual transportation projects. With that said, in working again through RTAC, again, please note that the executive board of RTAC is the elected officials representing each MPO and COG. And we're going to be presenting this to them at their meeting next week, I believe it is. What RTAC is attempting to put together is a statewide proposal for next legislative session. So next legislative session, again, would kick off January of 22, but there is a lot of work between now and then that needs to happen. The package that is being proposed by RTAC with our cooperation, SIMPO's cooperation, is a one-time funding of $40 million for transportation projects. The best way, we know there's a whole list of prioritized projects in many different areas. In particular, what our regional transportation plan has been referenced today, that has a list of projects that have been prioritized, have been given estimated cost. However, the one document that would be most notable in this case is the document that we're in as we speak, the Transportation Improvement Program, fiscal year 22 to 26. Again, this is a fiscally constrained document. It's something that is required of the MPOs. and as such would be recognized in this particular proposal. So what we're looking at, if we are successful and we stand together as Greater Arizona MPO and COGS, one-time funding, $40 million to the state of Arizona, Greater Arizona, in working with my colleagues in the other MPOs and COGS and our TAC, the consensus was that we would do we would divide that $40 million up based upon population, which would provide SIMPO with one-time funding of right around $4 million. It's a little under 4 million, but that's what we're looking at. In order to be a part of this statewide effort, we would need, again, our TIP to reflect potential projects that will join, again, all the other MPOs and COGS and say, look, these are the projects, if we get this one-time funding, that we have discussed as a staff, as a TAC, and as an executive board. Again, the reason for doing this now, I know it seems like a year from now is forever from now, but there is a lot of work that needs to happen, most especially with SIMPO staff. I would ask for your participation as much as you can, again, with our local elected officials, because in the end, it's going to require our state representatives to really hear this, to consider it, and to vote for it. In our working meeting 2 days ago, we attempted to capture what we heard as a staff, so please give us input if we missed something. But the number one project that we heard was, again, this SR 69-169 intersection improvements to convert it to a two-lane roundabout with a dollar amount of around $4.3 million. What was noted in that discussion was ADOT has put in for minor district funds that would actually cover the cost of this project. Our fingers are crossed. We're very hopeful that that'll move forward positively. If that does, then we would look to, if you will, more of a plan B. Plan B would be, the major project would be the 8989A eastbound ramp improvements. Today we've been talking a lot about the study of it. This would be the actual construction of it, which would be for $2.6 million. And then we listed again the adaptive signal system, and that's broken up into various projects, but we believe that if you group Plan B up again, that gets us to that possible one-time funding. The only note that I would offer before I open it up to questions and comments is I would strongly encourage real consideration, and I appreciate Dan Cherry talking about this the other day. By all means, we absolutely recognize the list, the prioritized list, but please try and take into account the strategy that is being done in the entire state of Arizona to really achieve some political success here, if you will. So for me to be able to talk about a single project that is regionally supported, there's a real drive, such as that 16969 is a great example. That's the most ideal project to be able to say, look, if we get this one-time funding, we can deliver this project. Here's who supports it. Here's the stats, the details. That is the most poster child for this type of one-time funding. If we go with Plan B, still very good. But again, we start diluting the conversation in me trying to explain multiple projects. And again, if there's a Plan C to this, again, the more projects, it just becomes much more complicated. So please just take into account from a staff recommendation standpoint, the better way for us to sell this to our local elected officials and then on to the state, the better. And I think that's what you've done here. So with that said, I'll be happy to take questions or comments at this point.
Okay, any comments or questions? And I may just start off, Vinny was saying, yeah, in my mind, if we just have whatever the proposal between, you know, staff and RTAC and the various parties involved about strategies, in my mind, as long as we're following this priority list, I think at least that's okay with me. If we only have a plan A that's better politically or whatever to function, and maybe just hold the rest in your pocket if you need to. I understand that, but I like trying to follow the priorities that we've looked at here. Not necessarily describing them, but as more money becomes available, even look towards the Robert Road and the Great Western as money becomes available, knowing it may be counterproductive to actually mention them now, but just keep that in our own personal TAC and work groups' minds to keep trying to follow our priorities as we've talked about today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just if I can add a comment, just to emphasize again, this is potential one-time funding. This is all based on looking to the future. We have no clue, but if the economy and things are where they are a year from now, this is possible. But I can't say enough to you and the public that, again, this is potential one-time funding that we're putting together a proposal. So we just want to be in a position to set that request up for success. Thank you.
Yep, and I'll just add to that. I understand that, and you know, as Member Davis has pointed out several times, it's great if we can find a way to get more documents on the shelves that are that quote shovel ready. It's all the more reason, because this funding, I know it's one time, but it seems to come up every so often, and it's, again, if we can find a way to get those on there, I think it'd just be better. And I know I've heard Norm say it today, so again, I know we have restrictions federally and all that, but one time seems to happen more and more often these days. So it's good to be prepared.
I may weigh in a little bit. You know, big dollar projects are great, and you know, we are finding more and more of our needs are high dollar projects. So you know, if you get one-time funding that'll, you know, take a bite out of it, that's wonderful. But you don't want to set yourself up for getting a, you know, say a $3 to $5 million one-time funding for something that then suddenly we got to come up with another $5 or $10 million to realize that. So, you know, having things that are in a reasonably, you know, bite-sized project kind of window is of great value, I think. And unless we want to handcuff ourselves to very large projects, you know, if member agencies are out there, you know, looking for other federal dollars through other grant programs and whatnot, and this helps to, you know, these one-time funding opportunities help to kind of bridge the gap, so to speak, and maybe replace some local dollars or something like that. That's another avenue to consider. But if this 169-69 intersection kind of hits the sweet spot, and I would imagine there are other opportunities out there, you know, along 89A, along 69, and some of our other more significantly regional routes that could use, you know, an influx of, you know, even in the $3 to $5 million range. And let's keep that in mind as an agent or as an organization here, just to kind of position ourselves, so to speak. So that's all.
Yep, and again, another fine point, and that's whenever these come up, Dan, I'm sure you're like me. They say we might be getting some money, and my first question is, how much? Because I can find a project to fit that's pretty high priority. So that's usually how it works, and that's where having at least this list, I think, is a good idea, because it does give you a variety, but it's just a question of when to talk about which project at what time. So All right. Any other comments? I know we're running long on time and I'm late for another meeting, so, anybody else want to discuss before we ask for a motion? Okay, maybe it's time to see if we could get maybe a motion concerning the MTIP.
Well, in the interest
Mr. Chairman, I could.
go ahead.
I'm not real clear what we're voting on.
I
It
can
appears to
make-
me we're voting on,
Okay.
I think we're just making a recommendation to put this forth for public comment. Recommending to the executive board.
Correct.
okay, did we move money, excuse me, to do the dual left turn lanes? I didn't quite follow that. We had a lot of discussion, but I didn't understand if that was going to be moved. It was out at what, year 26? Are we moving that back?
Yes,
That was
Norm,
my understanding.
it's in fiscal year 22 now.
Okay, so that's part of the motion?
Yes.
Yeah, so to answer Norm, my opinion is with modifications discussed today, those modifications being to move the dual on-ramps into 22 and make the adjustments with the HSIP. I don't know if it's a project, but it's our understanding that's biannual, so make those adjustments and fit the on-ramps into 22.
Correct.
Are we leaving Great Western alone for the funding?
Right now, we're reducing it by $25,000, but staff is going to work to replace that. But right now, if my calculations are correct, Norm, it's 25,000 less, but we'll keep calculating at this point.
Well, that's fine. As Frank mentioned earlier, whether it's 200 or 175, that's substantial enough to get us a document. I know we've kind of disagreed on whether or not we're buying right away yet, or actually what the scope is, but I want to get the corridor identified, and that's my opinion. So that's what I wanted to pursue with, I think Dan Gabriel is going to look at something for a scope.
Absolutely. Okay, does that clarify that for you, Norm?
Yeah, I'm able to vote then, thank you.
Okay. All right, so I tell you what, I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval of the 22 to 26 draft Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program for public comment with the modifications discussed today as just summarized by Vinnie. So.
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Okay, Chairman Marbury,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Member Mattingly,
Yes.
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Latier,
Yes.
Member Bonda.
Yes.
6 in favor, the motion passes.
Okay. With that, I always, Vinnie, let me know, do we need a motion to adjourn? I always get confused.
I always get confused too, Frank. I would say I would exercise the power of the chair and send everyone on their way.
Oh,
Bang the
goody. I
gavel.
knew I was here for a reason. So with that, we'll be in adjournment. Thank you, everyone, and especially for staying the extra few minutes.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.